Hi, I'm Mike Jones. You're minding your own business when your kid throws a video of a local teacher saying something like this in your face.
I wanted to go ahead and share my 5 tips on how to be a better trans ally in the classroom.
You think to yourself, I got to talk to the school board about this, but instead of finding an ear for your issue there, it's not uncommon for the entire board to be ignoring your 3-minute rant. That's why you need people on the school board who share your values and your desire to have your child educated, not indoctrinated. People like Pat Kelly. Pat, you're an attorney. You make plenty of money, so you're not angling for a political career here.
I don't have time left for a political career.
So tell me. You're running for the school board. What is your motivation for doing that?
My motivation is simply that I think that I've been an attorney for 44 years. So I don't have much fear in life. I know how to analyze laws. I know how to evade laws. I know how to interpret them. And I do know that the state of Oregon has essentially declared war on a whole segment of its population. And I'm here to defend everybody, including that segment of the population. The way it works is they set up standards, extremely liberal standards, and they don't go after citizens directly. They set up standards that offend potential patrons of the school district. Religious people, conservative people, and when they say, here's a standard, you have to comply with it, they know it's going to drive all those people out. They don't come in and they say, well, Roman Catholics can't be part of the school system anymore, or Jews can't be part of the system anymore. Put practicing in front of that. They just say, this is what we're going to teach, and like it or not, we're going to make you learn this. And the net result, and I think it's intentional, is to drive a significant portion of the population away from public schools, which we pay for, to concentrate that tool and that money in their hands to do what they want with it. It's essentially, meanwhile, we have in our community, I know that Edgewater, a significant evangelical Protestant church, is setting up its own school. We have St. Anne's that's set up its own school. But private schools, they're forcing people, largely against their will, they have to go to public, to have their faith respected, to leave. Thus, they control and capitalize those funds. And I don't think we should be driving away significant portions of the population. We should be finding ways which everybody feels welcome instead of discriminated against.
Well, and I think that there are probably a lot of people who have children of school age that may not have the money to go with a private school situation.
I am there, and I'm going to, in my best way possible, within the structures of the law, as best I can do, because I'm good at this, to make it as accommodating as possible for people that don't want to expose their children to various teachings, shall we say.
Okay.
They have quote, sex education manuals that would pass as pornography if placed any place else. If you're a practicing Christian or a practicing Muslim or an Orthodox Jew, you don't want that. And if you don't want it, you should be able to opt out. Well, the state is restricting our abilities to opt out. I just opt out anyway. I just ignore it.
So how effective do you think that you're going to be able to be? Are there edicts that they have in terms of educational content that you won't be able to do anything about?
Let us discuss educational content. They're not interested in educational content. They're interested in propagandistic content. If they were interested in educational content, we'd have a different result than we have today.
Certainly.
I have asked very smart children of the district. I've asked them. I said, "Well, who had the slaves in the Civil War?" They don't know. They didn't know what December 7th was or who the sides in World War. I'm a history guy, so I use history examples. I could use the quadratic equation if I ever used it in what I do, but they just don't know. Well, go back to they had the young pioneers under Joseph Stalin. They had the Hitler Youth underneath the German Reich. Anybody who grabs this tool and uses it to shape kids' heads in ways that are politically pleasing to themselves are evil people. So we need to take what few funds we have and direct them towards things that people need to function and to understand the world in which they live, not create future Democrat voters. I think that the left sees schools not as the purpose of a school is to create a left-wing voter. To them, it's a machine. They've created almost a perfect machine at this point, where we craft the limitations of what's in our books and what we're taught down to a position where what you're going to get out the back end is a somewhat disturbed, alienated, left-wing person that you can manipulate. The perfect voters that'll go back and vote for the system that provides the teachers more wealth and the schools and the government more wealth and more allegiance. Why was there Hitler Youth? Why was there a young pioneer group? I have a daughter-in-law that was a young pioneer under the old Soviet system. They are misusing our money, our trust, to turn it into nothing more than a industrial facility to stamp out voters to keep them in permanent power. That's all this is. And I wish to have my job is, and by the way, it's not happening accidentally. They'll say, well, it's just accidental. No, after you see your results long enough, you have to assume that that's their intended result. So I think they're intentionally doing this, and my job is to fix that machine, to take it apart, to re-put it back together again, to do what it's supposed to be doing, which is allow people to think, make their, and I don't care if people disagree with me. People disagree with me all the time. I find it fun.
But they should be free to do so.
And they should not be stigmatized for doing so. I don't care if a kid thinks he's gay as long as he and his parents work through it. I don't think the school system should be pushing sexuality of any sort.
I don't think they have any place. In fact, they have proven that they can't be trusted teaching your child about sex.
There's some new legislation coming up that they're going to make a clinic. They're going to try to every school a clinic. So it's so you are exposing, especially if you're conservative or religious along conservative lines, you can't. They are driving you away and then taking those funds and benefiting themselves. So they're punishing a significant portion of the population that should not have to be punished merely because they have different views. And by the way, once they solve the basic education problem, maybe we can argue about all these extraneous
matters. Right, exactly.
But they're nowhere near solving the basic educational.
Show us some good marks.
Yeah, when we get there, we say we've solved all of these problems about people who can't read.
Then you can talk about
people who don't
social
who can't
policy.
Make change. But don't give me diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what was it? Structural racism, systemic racism.
Yeah, systemic racism.
Systemic racism is not teaching everybody what they need to know to survive in a fair and we have to teach everybody we know to learn and to survive and to prosper. And once we get through with that, Maybe we can argue about other
Bingo.
things.
And-
We
and-
haven't
and
hit
you know
there
what?
yet. Not even close.
I believe that there are plenty of people that are of the left of center persuasion that want their children to have a decent education free of indoctrination. And they're your constituents as well.
Right.
And so you're
No.
not trying to
No.
fashion something specific for the
there is-
conservatives
No,
dream.
I think that people have to wake up to the system that is now engaging in systematic discrimination. And they want to admit that it's doing that. They honor that. They want that. And I think it's unfair. And I think the two high school kids can argue about things till hell freezes over, and God bless them, and keeps their brain working.
Right.
Should the teachers be taking sides on that? Hell no.
Yeah.
Should they be changing your kid's sex behind your back without your permission?
Oh,
Hell
absolutely
no.
not. As a matter
Hell
of
no.
fact,
Yeah,
in light of this circumstance currently, I believe that there should be no audience with a counselor that the parent is not also an audience to.
the parent should have access to everything.
Yeah, and
if the school system
with cameras,
if the
they can
school-
easily do it.
If the school system thinks they're in danger, you go to child services and let a system that's qualified to deal with this deal with it, meaning judges and the legal system. It's the judges and the legal system that ultimately protect individual rights, including abused children.
Right.
So, but you don't. It isn't the school. Is once again, it's been essentially taken over and made into a machine to achieve a certain result, and I'm not interested in that certain result. I'm interested in thinking, free thinking, and enjoying. I love school, as a matter of fact. You could probably convince me to go back today if I could get away with it. But to have the limits it has now, and recently there's a case that popped up where they said and this is how they discriminate. They say to a Roman Catholic mother, you can't adopt a child because you wouldn't be willing to give that child gender-altering
yeah.
drugs.
Yes. Gender-affirming care. they
So,
would say.
sorry,
Yes.
you can't adopt anymore. Well, who can adopt then? Well, if you went to an Orthodox Jew, it would be the same thing. If you went to a Muslim, I don't even think you need to be an Orthodox Muslim, just a Muslim. That would not be acceptable. Why are we driving all of an evangelical? Why are we driving all these people away from the schools?
Yes.
It was bad when we drove black people away from schools and had segregated schools, or Asians. It was all bad then, but now somehow it's okay to drive people who have intellectual or religious differences away.
And listen, I think that this is a conflict that has to go deep with people who are left of center, who historically they were for free speech. These are the rebel hippies from the 60s.
Were they for it only to abuse as a tool to obtain an objective?
I don't know. I think there has been a cultural change. What I'm getting at is that there has to be in the heart of a true classic liberal, there has to be a conflict with what's happening currently because they understand instinctively that it's unfair.
Well, you're confusing the ability to reason with the ability to believe in a religion. You're not seeing that they have formulated their own religion. And anybody who disagrees with them are a heretic, and therefore should be eliminated from whatever teaching or social scene they can come up with. So they have lost their way. They no longer believe in science. They believe that they're always correct, and they frame whatever belief they have, no matter how willy-nilly in terms of a scientific debate. And they say, you're a denier if you don't believe in them. Well, I can deny in America any damn thing I want to deny. And I'm not going to require that you agree or disagree with me. And the other thing that's hideous, too, is that it's hard to get access to textbooks. in the district, and I think anything they teach your children should be available for you to see.
Oh, absolutely. There should be a list on a county website that tells you
Either put them
all
on
of
the website, the books themselves, and if they were worried about copyright, we can investigate that. But copies of these materials should be made somewhere in a library.
that anybody
For
could come in
anybody
and
come say,
inspect
look,
them.
this is the class we're teaching. This is what we're teaching, and if it is offensive, something more than just a small level, but if it's deeply offensive to anybody to send your kids to these classes, you should have the right to opt out.
Absolutely.
And you should be able to opt out with dignity, not with ridicule. So that's where I am. I as far as how do you solve problems where you have let's just say you are, I'm just inventing these faiths, by the way, because let's say you have a nice Mormon girl that was taught very conservative sexual values. And you want her to use a locker room with a guy that thinks he's a female and has to look at her, she has to look at his genitalia, and your response to that is, good, it'll make her grow up. That's not your call. She should never have to do that. There should always be an option for both those people, actually.
I
And nobody
agree,
should
and I
be
think
forced.
I also think that the majority of parents are in agreement with that. Now, they may not speak that publicly for fear of being, criticized for their backward thinking, but I believe that they do agree with your point.
It's not backward thinking.
Yes.
It's not even.
I'm suggesting that the culture may
they would characterize it as backward
Yes.
thinking. It's not backward. It's different thinking. It's not backward thinking. And
it's traditional thinking.
They believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. How's that being exercised anywhere with these examples? It's not.
Yeah.
So so we have to find a way, and I don't think any kid should hate themselves for coming to school. If a gay kid comes to school, he shouldn't hate himself. If a Mormon or a Catholic or a Jewish person shouldn't hate themselves when they come home and then question their faith and say, why am I here? Get me out of here.
Right.
All of that is sick.
And people who mistreat those people should be dealt with.
What the hell do they know about diversity, equity, and inclusion? And I know of several children that I've talked to that can't wait to get out of the high school system. And generally, it starts getting nasty in high school in terms of where all these things tend to converge.
I agree.
And they can't wait to leave. They can't wait to leave. So we have beautiful facilities. We're spending monies on teachers and textbooks and heating. And because of the cultural climate, instead of loving learning like I used to love learning in high school, I loved high school. And they got to leave. And they got to leave under somewhat bitter circumstances, and I don't think that's the role of the state. I am repulsed by that type of attitude, and the problem is have you ever heard our school board ever speak up in public and complain about these issues?
Rarely. Occasionally, they have a single dissenter on the board.
Well, or they unify and say, no, this is wrong. This is disrespectful of our minorities, our religious minorities, our intellectual minorities, and our it is. They need to respect everybody, and there is no one way. No kid should hate themselves. No kid should be subjected to violence at all. And if they worry about stuff in school, rather than worrying about extended notions of gender, maybe they should be worried about fentanyl. Or fentanyl being distributed as a party drug, everybody expecting it's another drug and kids dying it. and your kid could end up dead on the floor.
Yeah,
The neighbor's
that's
kid
right.
could end up dead in your house.
That's pretty scary stuff.
So that's, that's like a plague. And is the school system really addressing something that's systematically killing children in America? I never hear anything.
Well, personally, I think the parents should be on top of that story.
But that's something that could cause immediate death, where they worry about various sexual practices scarring people someday into the future, blah, 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 when you got something that is infesting our community. And there was a baby that died in somebody's living room about a month ago.
I heard about that.
So I'm in contact with the police department, and about once a month I call them up to ask the statistics, and basically about 2 people die a month in Josephine County from drug overdoses.
Wow.
So they said I'm not. It's 1 per month in the city, and I'm extrapolating from that to the county being half the people live in the county.
Sure.
So that's why I'm blowing that out to B2 as a reasonable guess. But that's a clear and present danger for people who claim that they have capabilities, thinking capabilities. A child is mixed up in his gender. Is their first reaction really to give them drugs that can hurt them the rest of their lives?
Apparently.
Is that really the first reaction? Or is a false narrative been set up? There's a whole spectrum of responses that can be. Is the kid depressed? Is the kid autistic? You have to do a very sophisticated analysis.
Or should I pick up the phone and call their parents and tell them about
this?
this?
You don't. They're not psychologists. They don't have the capability.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying.
It's a problem that has to be solved by the parents as well, not just the school. And there isn't only 2 choices. It isn't, the kid will get depressed and commit suicide. Or
that's leverage.
We have to modify their entire bodies and hormone system to achieve an objective. Isn't there
permanently? Basically sterilizing the child.
That's dumb. That's a propagandistic solution to a problem when there's plenty that falls. Is the kid depressed? Yeah. Does the kid have any physical problems? They're finding out a significant proportion of supposedly gender dysphoria is nothing more than confused autistic kids. And they in the United Kingdom, with their public health system, they just shut the whole practice down. Because they found out the screening processes, which are probably superior to ours, are so defective that they're hurting people when they end up in adults and they say, "What the hell happened to me? And why did you let this happen?" And I don't want anybody to say, "Mr. Kelly, why did you allow this to happen?" If you're an adult and you want to do a sex change, fine. I don't really care. And in many ways, I'm a intense libertarian. But that should be left for children when they become adults so they can make the decisions and carry the blame themselves as it's wrong. It's not my job to do this. It's not the school systems to do it. It's the school systems to teach calculus.
Yes.
It's the school systems to teach American history, or how government actually works. I think if they want a course on how government actually works.
We've been talking for over 20 minutes here, and we've been discussing these problems that would be very easy to shut off like a switch were there the will to do so, and we could get on to the actual function of school, which you just mentioned, teaching people reading, writing, arithmetic. And
much more, actually. It's just that it isn't just the basics, but you have to have the capability to survive and to think independently. And I like interesting curricula, but it isn't. You have to know who fought in World War II at some time in your life. You have to understand that there's more history than 15 minutes ago.
Nothing bugs me more than watching these man on the street interviews where they ask who we won independence from, and people have no idea. When was World War II? And they think it was like 1965 or something. They have no clue.
It is frustrating to listen to, and I patiently explain that if you don't know where you are in time, how is that any different than not knowing where you are in place?
Outside of these issues that we have been discussing, are the problems, as you see it, with education and their inability to produce a competitive product, are these complicated issues to deal with? Is this too complex for most people?
It is no, because you and I grew up under systems that taught us extremely well. There's one room schoolhouses that taught people extremely well. If you listen to, let's say, Patrick Henry's famous speech, "Give me liberty or give me death," has college vocabulary. They had 18th century facilities. You can teach what you need to teach. We'd get upset. I'd listen to, my kids were in the district at one point, and they said, "We have many new ways of teaching." Well, I said, "Then why don't you use them?" It's you're not achieving the basics agenda or giving people reasonable tools, and you're doing it. They're doing it on purpose because they don't want free-thinking people. They don't want independent people. They want people that are malleable and will vote certain ways. That's all this is. And between the protracted control of a one-party system in Oregon and teachers' unions, they favor obedience and compliance and rote over any capability for free thought. Why do people get so upset? Where'd all these ADD kids come from? Maybe you're just not supplying intellectually satisfying material for them. Maybe it's not a sign that they're sick. It might be a sign that you're lazy. Okay, I'm 68 years old. I've learned a lot. A lot of experience in life. I see a problem, I'm going to fix it. I really don't care if anybody else wants to fix it with me. I'm not looking over my shoulder saying I got 5 people that agree with me or disagree with me. I find a fireman goes to the fire. A police officer goes to the gunshots. A teacher should go to the ignorance.
Yeah.
A responsible person should go where he's needed the most. Of the offices that are available. There's no office that probably gives you less public attention, but needs more work than the school board. The only one I can think of in the county is city councilman for Cave Junction. But it needs the work, it needs the attention, and it needs some backbone. So anyway, that's just fine with me. It doesn't bother me. I'm honored to do it. If for a chance I don't get elected, I'm perfectly okay with that because I'm not doing this for anything other than I think I'm needed. And meetings might become fun again. People might show.
You never know.
It might be actually entertaining.
Yeah, it could be.
But the problems, I think, mostly, well, they're local, but it's local people willing to roll over for the state without ever raising a voice or without ever saying what's the penalty for not complying with the state. Is there a workaround? There's a million questions to be asked, but if you're predisposed to the state agenda, you're never going to ask those questions. So, and I'll ask those questions, and I don't care who I embarrass when I do it. It doesn't really affect me the way it affects other people. So that's why I'm doing it. It's going to be fun. In a sick sort of way, it's going to be fun.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Pat.